Every morning, hundreds of millions of people pour themselves a bowl of cereal. They add milk. They sit down. And they have no idea that the man who invented what they are eating created it specifically to stop them from having sex. Not as a joke, not as a metaphor. Literally. The founder of breakfast cereal was a 19th century physician who believed that bland food would suppress sexual desire across the entire American population, prevent people from masturbating, and make the country morally superior in the process. His name was John Harvey Kellogg. He ran one of the most famous health institutions in American history. He was brilliant, genuinely respected by some of the wealthiest people in the country, and almost completely out of his mind. This is the story of how one man's obsession with controlling other people's bodies accidentally created the most common breakfast food on earth, and how his own brother stole it from him by adding sugar. The Man and the Sand. Battle Creek, Michigan, 1876. A young physician named John Harvey Kellogg takes over a small Seventh-day Adventist health institution and turns it into something that should not have been possible. He calls it the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Everyone who visits calls it the San. Within a decade, it becomes one of the most sought-after destinations in America. Not a hospital, not exactly a hotel. Somewhere between the two, except this one charged the equivalent of a luxury vacation and offered treatments that would make a modern doctor call the police. Henry Ford came. John D. Rockefeller came. Amelia Earhart came. Presidents sent their families. The waiting list stretched months long. The San ran on a theory Kellogg had spent years developing. He believed that virtually all human disease traced back to two root causes: bad digestion and sexual activity. Not just promiscuity, any sexual activity. Including, and this matters for everything that follows, the kind involving no other person. Kellogg was a devout Seventh-day Adventist, a tradition that emphasized clean living and physical purity. In 1877, he published a book called Plain Facts for Old and Young. It ran to nearly 500 pages. A significant portion described in clinical, exhaustive detail the physical and moral consequences of what Victorians politely called self-abuse. He listed 41 warning signs that someone was engaging in it. Rounded shoulders was on the list. So was acne. The science. He thought he was doing. Here is the part that matters for the cereal. Kellogg was not simply a moralist ranting about sin, he believed he was doing medicine. The medical establishment of his era broadly agreed with him that masturbation caused epilepsy, blindness, insanity, and premature death. These were published positions held by respected institutions, not fringe views. What Kellogg added was a dietary theory. He believed that meat, spices, alcohol, and rich food inflame the body and increase sexual desire. Therefore, the solution was the blandest possible diet. Remove all stimulating food, and you remove the fuel for the urges. The diet at the San was severe. No meat, no alcohol, no caffeine, no spices of any kind. Patients ate nuts and yogurt, and were required to chew every bite exactly 32 times, one chew per tooth, by Kellogg's personal mandate. He believed insufficient chewing caused digestive disease, and digestive disease caused moral weakness. He called this system biologic living. His patients mostly hated the food. They complained constantly that it was tasteless and monotonous. Kellogg took that as a sign it was working. The accident in the kitchen. In 1894, Kellogg and his younger brother Will Keith were working in the sanitarium's kitchen, trying to develop new foods for patients. They cooked a batch of wheat, got distracted by other work, and left it out overnight. When they returned the next morning, the wheat had gone stale. A normal person throws it out. Kellogg ran it through rollers instead. The result was thin, flat flakes. They toasted them, gave them to patients, and the patients ate them without the usual complaints. For food at the San, that counted as a standing ovation. Kellogg saw a breakthrough. Here was something bland enough to serve his medical purpose, and edible enough for people to actually swallow. He experimented with different grains. Corn produced the best result. He patented cornflakes in 1895 and began distributing them at the sanitarium. He had no interest in selling them commercially. The cereal was medicine. It had a specific function. It was not a breakfast food. His brother Will had a completely different read on the situation. Will was not a doctor. He was a businessman who had spent years working as John Harvey's underpaid assistant, managing the San's accounts and operations for $5 a week, while his older brother took all the credit. He had watched John Harvey build something genuinely profitable while being treated like a junior employee in a business he helped run. He had also watched patients force down tasteless food because they had no other option. Will wanted to add sugar. The other things Kellogg was doing. Before we get to the brother war, we have to talk about what else Kellogg offered at the SAN, because the cereal is the most benign item on this list by a wide margin. Kellogg believed the yogurt bacteria his patients consumed could also improve the digestive system if introduced from the opposite direction. He built a machine specifically for this, 15 quarts per day, half consumed orally, half administered by the machine. He published papers about it. For male patients he suspected of masturbating, he recommended circumcision performed without anesthetic. His documented reasoning was that the pain and soreness would create a negative association with the behavior and discourage it going forward. For female patients, he recommended applying carbolic acid directly to the affected area. He described this as a procedure to allay abnormal excitement. He wrote all of it down. He published it under his own name. His colleagues read it and largely agreed. Kellogg won 23 patents during his lifetime, lectured at medical institutions across the country, and treated more than 300,000 patients at the SAN. He died in 1943 at 91 years old, having never once had sex by his own account. He and his wife Ella adopted 42 children but never consummated their marriage. He considered this his greatest personal achievement. The Brother War. Will Keith Kellogg added sugar to the cornflakes. John Harvey found out and was furious. Sugar was exactly the kind of stimulating substance he had spent 30 years trying to eliminate from the American diet. Sweetening the cereal destroyed its entire medical purpose. Will did not stop. He bought the rights to the cornflake formula from his brother, founded the Battle Creek Toasted Cornflake Company in 1906, and immediately marketed the cereal to the general public as a delicious breakfast food rather than a medical intervention. He added more sugar. He ran advertising campaigns. He introduced prizes inside the boxes. He sent free samples to grocery stores across the country. Kellogg's Corn Flakes became one of the best-selling food products in American history. John Harvey never forgave him. The two brothers barely spoke for the remaining decades of their lives. Will built an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars on a product John Harvey invented to suppress desire, and John Harvey spent the rest of his career watching the sanitarium slowly decline until it went bankrupt during the Great Depression. Meanwhile, a former SAN patient named C.W. Post had been watching from the sidelines. He left Battle Creek, used what he had learned, and invented grape nuts and Post cereals. He made a fortune of his own before Kellogg's Corn Flakes had reached full national distribution. The two companies spent decades competing for the same breakfast table. Neither of them was what John Harvey had in mind. The global cereal industry generates roughly $30 billion in revenue every year. None of that is what John Harvey Kellogg intended. He intended medicine. He intended to reduce desire in the American population through diet. He intended his cornflakes to be distributed in a clinical setting to patients who needed them. What happened instead is that his brother put sugar in the box, added a toy, and sold it to children. Sylvester Graham, the Presbyterian minister who invented graham crackers in the 1830s for almost exactly the same reasons, would have had the same reaction. Graham crackers today contain more added sugar per serving than most breakfast cereals. The crackers Graham invented to suppress desire are now the base layer of s'mores. The history of breakfast food is a history of people trying to control other people's bodies through diet and losing immediately to anyone who offered something that actually tasted good. Drop a comment if you had cereal this morning. You have John Harvey Kellogg to thank. And subscribe, because every video on this channel starts with something ordinary and ends somewhere you did not expect.